Kia ora guys, my name is Max and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is definitely going to cause a bit of controversy. It's my all-time Six Nations 15. After the conclusion of the 2024 tournament, I sat down and I was like, you know what? Let's have a bit of a debate. It's the start of a World Cup cycle. Let's get people talking and let's see how much such a list would change in 4 years' time. It is, of course, the all-time Six Nations 15. In my humble opinion. A massive thank you, as well as per normal, to my patrons. I'm going to start off by listing to you guys some substitutes that I would pick as if this was a real match. I'm then going to go through the back line, then to the forward pack, and do a bit of a recap of who I've selected for this all-time Six Nations 15 overall. My number 16, my reserve hooker, is Rory Best, who is one of Ireland's most capped ever players. He played many tests as the captain, and of course broke a fair few records towards the twilight of his career, including becoming one of Ireland's oldest ever players. He also captains them to their third Grand Slam in 2018, finishing off a very impressive career with them in 2019 at the World Cup. Then my reserve prop is going to be Gethin Jenkins at loosehead. Gethin Jenkins, also one of the most capped ever players, showed a lot of fitness, a lot of power in the scrum, and the Welsh scrum definitely did start to lose a bit of its power after Jenkins retired, and I think post Jenkins they have had a few problems at prop because at the time he retired in 2016, no one was really there to replace him. My other reserve prop is going to be Tadhg Furlong of Ireland. While he's not quite yet reached 100 tests, he is still playing, he could get there, and he's been on 2 British and Irish Lions tours already. With very soft hands and devastating carrying to back up his scrummaging prowess, he's really revolutionised the Irish team in recent years. Number 19 is also from Ireland, Paul O'Connell, the reserve lock, a very inspirational leader back in his day. He's since moved into coaching. He was very smart when it came to analysis, and it had a really good effect that rubbed off on other players. My number 20 is going to be Jean Prat, the first ever coach of France and the first player in history to reach 50 test caps. My reserve halfback, as you can see, is also French, Antoine Dupont. Need I say more? He's probably going to go down in history as France's greatest ever player by the time he retires. The fact that he's 27 years old and already in this team, it goes to show how well he's been doing as of late for the French. Barry John of Wales is going to be my reserve fly half. What a career he had back in the 70s, a true giant of the Welsh game. And George North is going to be number 23. He had a very long career for Wales, over 120 tests, recently played his final test match in the 13 jersey. Though he didn't necessarily go out the way he would have wanted to, he's one of their highest all-time try scorers. He got 49 tries overall. He was a devastating winger and a devastating centre, so I have to have him in here. Now guys, as we get into the starting 15, we go to the back line and I'm going to have Gareth Edwards as my number 9. Sir Gareth Edwards, what a career he had. He played 13 tests as the Welsh captain, and at the time he retired, he was also Wales's all-time leading try scorer. Being the inaugural winner of Welsh Rugby Player of the Year, it definitely meant he was going to have some kind of standing amongst their greats, and winning the Grand Slam 3 times as well just simply showed his influence. Playing for Wales from 1967 to 1978, he truly did have a remarkable career, Gareth Edwards, as did Owen Farrell, who may have played his final test match in 2023. He's about to move off to play for Racing 92 in France, so has potentially played his final ever test for England, and it's a bit insulting, it's a bit of a joke to see how underappreciated this guy has been. He's England's highest ever point scorer, the second highest point scorer in the history of the game. He played 48 tests as the English captain, went on 3 Lions tours, and he played 118 tests overall in an 11-year career, which is very impressive. He also won the Six Nations 3 times, which is very good considering how hard is it actually getting to win the Six Nations multiple times as a player. He also won the Grand Slam with England in 2016, and unlike Johnny Wilkinson, whose career was kind of just defined by one moment, Farrell is obsessed with winning, and he was always able to alter his approach to the game based on who he was playing with and the team strategy. Think of how often he would contest for the ball at the breakdown when he was playing alongside George Ford. Think of his supreme game management playing alongside Manu Tuilagi in midfield, and simply put, think of the accuracy of his passing, next level stuff. The amount of trophies he's won, the amount of awards he's won, he's basically won every single major award. He has gone for put his hand up for, aside from World Player of the Year in the Rugby World Cup. A very, very impressive player who was also England's 2017 Player of the Year. Owen Farrell, simply put, deserves more respect from the fans. He's a far better player right now than Jonny Wilkinson ever was, and I can't think of a number 10 in world rugby aside from Dan Carter who has done more for the game in their career. As we move over to midfield, I've got a bit of a safer option because, let's be honest, Philippe Sella is the only real option. Having played for France from 1982 to 1995, he did play most of his career in the amateur era and yet became the second player in history to reach 90 tests and the first in history to play 100. It's unbelievably insane, and he's also still to this day the second to most capped French player of all time. He was also one of the first players in history to reach 30 test tries and really started to give the All Blacks a run for their money in the lead up to the 1987 World Cup, winning a Grand Slam on the way to that World Cup final, though they didn't quite get across the finish line. Sella remains a great of French rugby to this day, so realistically was the only player who was going to wear this 12 jersey. We now go to Brian O'Driscoll, the number 13, still one of the most capped players of all time and the second to highest try scorer in history for a midfielder after George North, who I mentioned before. O'Driscoll played in 83 incredible tests as the Irish captain. Though he didn't necessarily win an insane amount of trophies, he started to really rack them up by the end of his career when he was now teammates with the players he inspired back when they were kids. All the players who looked up to O'Driscoll in their youth got to play alongside him, and at the end of his career he finally got a payoff for all the work he did for Irish rugby. He was a living highlight reel, could defend like crazy, and of course scored an unbelievably famous try in the 2001 tour to Australia. Brian O'Driscoll, 15-year career from 1999 to 2014, absolutely insane and one of the greatest players to ever live. I'm sure you'll have picked up on my lack of recency bias, and this is especially the case when I go towards the outside backs. Cyril Lowe of England, despite having his career cut short by the First World War, he was a true patriot for his team on and off the pitch. He got a recall after the war, and despite playing just 25 tests for England, he did get 18 tries. He still holds the record for most tries in an individual Six Nations series to this day, and of course he held the try scoring record for England for 66 years. The record was not broken until after his death by Rory Underwood. The amount of trophies for such few test matches played as well is a very impressive record, so Cyril Lowe is absolutely the left wing for this team. As for 14, I've got Ian Smith of Scotland. I really wanted to look at players who transcend time with their records, and there's probably no better player than Ian Smith. He played just 32 tests and as well as 2 of the Lions. He got to finish his career as the Scotland captain. He was also part of the first ever Scotland team to win a Grand Slam, something they've not done since the year of my birth in present time. As well as that, he was a British and Irish Lions tourist in 1924, 100 years ago to this day, and as of the time of his death, he was still the highest try scorer in world rugby. It took 54 years for David Campese to break that record. It took Brian O'Driscoll 78 years to beat his record for most tries in the Six Nations, and it took Stuart Hogg 88 years to beat his record for most tries for Scotland overall. A record breaker who truly transcended time, Ian Smith deserves to be my number 14. As we now go to number 15, while Stuart Hogg can't necessarily say he's had the same positive impact off the pitch, he was an unbelievably excellent rugby player during his career, playing 102 tests overall, including 100 for Scotland. Hogg, as you can see, was very influential for the Scots. As I said before, he's their all-time leading try scorer, and he also won the Calcutta Cup 4 times, which up until recently was a real rarity for Scotland in the professional era, becoming the first player in history as well to win Six Nations Player of the Championship back-to-back. I think it's safe to say that while Hogg may cause controversy off the field, he was absolutely one of the best players Scotland has ever fielded, and in my opinion, the second to greatest ever player for them, barring Ian Smith. We'll now just take a quick ad break, then we'll get into the forward pack. I'm sure this is going to be a controversial one. Marco Vunipola, though, I believe is the best loose head prop to ever play in the Six Nations. While some people will compare his scrummaging technique to Joe Marler, Ultimately, Vunipola had far better discipline and was a far more lethal carrier with ball in hand, playing 88 tests overall, including an amazing 9 for the British and Irish Lions. Getting selected for all 3 tests in 3 different tours really speaks to the work ethic he brought to the environments he went into. Winning the Six Nations 3 times as well as getting the 2016 Grand Slam were definitely proof of back when he was in his peak, how devastating he was in the scrum. He was also able to help England win a lot of other trophies, as we can see. He also, of course, holds the record for most individual tackles by a prop in the test match. In 2019, he got 27 tackles against the Irish. Vunipola was also the 2018 England Rugby Player of the Year, and simply put, he's much like Owen Farrell, very, very underappreciated, and I'm thinking that history is definitely going to look back on him with much fonder eyes. We'll now go over to the hooker, and I think this is kind of just one of those jerseys in this team where there is no debate. Keith Wood is another one of them. Playing from 1994 to 2003, he had a very illustrious 9-year career, becoming the inaugural winner of World Rugby Player of the Year back in 2001. He also got 15 test tries, which at the time I believe was a record for a hooker. He got 4 tries in 1 test at one stage, and to this day it's tied with other players for most tries by an Irish player in a test match. While the amount of trophies that Wood racked up weren't too insane, I do think that overall he did have a massive impact with pushing Irish rugby on the map, and had he been able to play a little bit longer, things definitely would have been better for his trophy cabinet. While he may not have enjoyed the fruits of his labour, he made more impact than any other hooker in Irish history for sure. We now go to tight head prop, and Jason Leonard once more. Pretty much no dispute that he's going to be the tight head prop for this team. He became the first English player and the second forward in history to win 100 test caps, playing a 14-year international career, including being in the class of 2003, which won the Rugby World Cup. Leonard did only score 1 test try, but that was simply just a case of him being a superb fringe guard at the breakdown, a very, very imposing jackal threat, and of course a scrummaging beast. He was the most dominant player in an England pack that was really, really just feared by so many opponents. He won the Calcutta Cup 13 times, for crying out loud. He was a very successful player, and I think it's safe to say that he's one of the greatest scrummagers to ever play the game. Now at number 4 we have another Irish player, Willie John McBride, the most capped British and Irish Lions player of all time. He's also the first player in history to reach 60, 70 and 80 tests, and the third to reach 50. An unbelievably amazing player who once again transcended time. He was really able to revolutionise the threat of the line-out. Standing at 6'4" for the time, he was a very, very big player, despite the fact that he would most likely play as a blindside flanker in today's era. McBride is forever going to be remembered because, simply put, no British and Irish line will ever be able to beat that record. He was also part of a very, very imposing Irish side that was well known for striking fear into the hearts of the opponents, as he won the Five Nations twice as well. We now go over to number 5, Alan Wynne Jones, the most capped player in the history of Test rugby. While English fans will be grumpy I haven't picked Martin Johnson, I think that ultimately Alan Wynne Jones pretty much embodies Welsh rugby. Wales may not be doing too well right now, but with Jones playing 48 tests as their captain from his total of 170, he really just did put his work ethic completely into Welsh rugby. For crying out loud, he was 37 years old when he played his final test in 2023, having began his career when I was just 6 years old back in 2006. He was also able to win 3 Grand Slams from his 5 Six Nations wins, which was very, very awesome stuff. He played in 4 Lions tours, 4 World Cups, and of course he was the first player in history to reach 150 tests, having been a 2-time Welsh Rugby Player of the Year and also the 2019 Six Nations Player of the Tournament, captaining to the semi-finals of the 2019 Rugby World Cup. Jones had a very, very impressive career. While he probably tarnished his reputation by playing too far past his prime, you cannot fault him for the effort he put in from day one to his last day in a Welsh jersey. We now move over to the loose forwards, and we have Thierry Dusautoir, the first French forward to win World Rugby Player of the Year. Dusautoir, similarly to Keith Wood, played played in an era of French rugby where they weren't really able to win too many trophies, but up until 2022, France had not won a Six Nations since 2010, and guess what? Dusautoir was the captain for that very successful side who made a big statement ahead of the 2011 Rugby World Cup. He went from the small kid really just out there to prove a point, making the most tackles by an individual in a test match in 2007, to the absolute gargantuan influence 4 years later in 2011 as the captain. Dusautoir was also able to score 6 test tries, which wasn't too bad, and he also to this day holds the record for the most caps as the French captain in history. His career may not have ended the way he wanted for it to end, but my goodness, once again, you cannot fault the effort from his 9-year career from 2006 to 2015. We now move over to number 7, another doozy that's probably not going to be controversial at all. Sam Warburton stands head and shoulders across any other 7 in the Northern Hemisphere. Sam Warburton for pretty much his whole career was the second to best number 7 in the world, while the first place was always chopping and changing between the likes of McCaw, Barclay, Pocock. It was always Warburton nipping down there, being a nuisance at the breakdown and getting penalised surprisingly few times. He holds the record for most tests as the Welsh captain and captains the British and Irish Lions in all 5 of the tests he played for them across 2 tours. He also won a Grand Slam in 2012, really showing his influence over there. He was also, of course, the youngest British and Irish Lions captain of all time, and having been a total inspiration in 2011, he was Welsh Rugby Player of the Year for that year. He was an excellent communicator with the referees as well, and was second only to Richie McCaw and Sia Khaleesi for his brilliant interpretations of the breakdown laws. Maybe we can rank Eben Etzebeth behind him as well. Sam Warburton, an absolute legend who sadly did have to retire aged just 29, but my goodness did he have one heck of a career. Now as we get to the final player on this list, look guys, I know Sebastien Chabal is probably France's greatest ever player, unless you want to say Antoine Dupont's better than him, but ultimately, Talupi Faletau I think was a bit more of a complete number 8 because, well, Chabal was often shifting between number 8 and lock, and Faletau, having played from 2011 to the present day, throughout his 109 test caps, including one as captain, has always been a consistent threat for the Welsh at number 8, having scored 13 test tries with his devastating carrying, his workhorse levels of defensive work ethic and stuff, and also he's won 3 Six Nations championships. Need we say more? He showed incredible determination to come back from injury after 2 years of missing Welsh rugby from 2018 to 2020, and he just did not miss a beat. He went on 3 British and Irish Lions tours throughout his career. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to make it to a 4th, but he also went to 3 Rugby World Cups, and he was 2016's Welsh Rugby Player of the Year, one of the greatest players of all time without question, and of course the greatest number 8 to ever play in the Six Nations Championship. So guys, to remind you, my starting 15 is Marco Vunipola, Keith Wood, Jason Leonard, Willie John McBride, Alan Wynne-Jones, Terry Dusautoir, Sam Warburton, Talupi Faletau, Gareth Edwards, Owen Farrell, Cyril Lowe, Felipe Selar, Brian O'Driscoll, Ian Smith, and Stuart Hogg. Thank you very much for watching this video guys, really appreciate you for viewing this. Definitely share your thoughts down below in the comments section because I'm sure this is going to make for a pretty interesting debate. Thank you once more for watching the video, and one more thanks to my patrons. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers guys.